let's go snorkeling. Aloha, my name is Ann Bell. And before I get started on my presentation, I would like to acknowledge some folks. Number one, how cool is it that I get to stand up here because of a bird? It has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with all this other stuff we think it might have to do with, or your tax dollars or anything else, but it has to do with the popularity of a bird. It's not a cuddly polar bear, and it's not a cuddly charismatic bobcat. So I feel super, super fortunate to be able to be in that position, to be able to talk and to be able to share wisdom with you, who is the name of Elysian Albatross. But I'm also not here alone, and I'd like to introduce some really key folks. I wish my cohorts wouldn't show up at my public talks on Sundays, because it makes me a lot more nervous than if I just was talking to the public. But I'm glad you're here. But I would like to introduce Kaipo. Can you stand up, Kaipo? And I'm going to put, yay, I'm going to put Kaipo on the spot every now and then again, because I definitely would not be standing here if it wasn't for Kaipo and his amazing photography skills and videography skills. And I also wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for Laura, and she's not going to stand up because she probably doesn't want to stand up, but she can raise her hand. I wouldn't be here for Laura, because when I went and said, Laura, there's this seabird that's super popular. We all know her name, and Laura has met her before, and some of you in the room have met Wisdom before. And I said, as of last November, she's turned viral, and somehow I've got to figure out how to bring Wisdom, how to bring Midway back to the world. Do you have any suggestions? And she thought for about 2 seconds. She said, sure, go talk to Nainoa. So I went down and talked to Nainoa, and Nainoa took about 2 seconds and said, well, Nahalei Anthony is your guy. He's the one that has brought the canoe to you guys and to folks throughout the world in very remote locations. And Midway's a very remote location. So if anybody can do it, or if they can find anybody to help you bring Wisdom to the world via video, via live stream, via any of that kind of thing, just go to him and he'll take care of you. So that's Nalai who sent me Kaipo, and so there's why I'm standing here today, along with Barbara Mayer. Will you stand up, Barbara Mayer? Yes. Barbara Mayer has been hounding the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for years and said you have to share Midway with the students in Hawaii. The students need this, they deserve this, they need to feel like they know Midway and understand that Midway is a part of their archipelago. And she did some amazing work to make sure that when I landed there with Kaipo, well, actually I went 2 weeks ahead of Kaipo, right? When I landed there, Barbara made sure that we had 3 or 4 classrooms to talk to, because if we were going to press a live stream button with the video capability, she wanted to make sure that students were engaged on the back end. So she did it. She made it happen. Thank you, Barbara Mayer. And then with Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, I work for Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument. We have 2 from top of the line of their communication team here, which is Tony Paris, who is actually a NOAA employee, as well as Deborah Ward with the state. My gosh, you guys all rolled out. Okay, I'll start with Deborah Ward's with the state. Tony Paris is my communication team, and we all work together very cohesively. And they've all of us have been on board from the beginning as to how we could share wisdom with the world. And they were more than welcome to add their input and to be a part of what we were able to do. Again, with their support, they're standing there going, yeah, you got to get Ann back up to Midway if wisdom's that popular. So thanks you guys for your support. And this guy I've been with forever. How many years? Long time. Andy Collins. Andy Collins and I were, Andy Collins and I were together before it became Papa Hanauma Kuakea Marine National Monument. And those were the good old days before a lot of government egos started stepping in, and we got away with a lot of stuff before a lot of employees got added on. But we've had done a lot of really, really cool educational stuff. One big one starting with navigating change. So thanks you guys for coming. Thank you for your support. My former boss is here. Who's going to keep me on time and tell me to stop talking in about 35 minutes. And that's Barbara Maxfield, who was head of public affairs for many, many years for Fish and Wildlife, and now she's enjoying the good life, being retired. Okay, so let's get on with the show. This is something I was hoping that would encourage you guys to walk into the room, to start gathering for our presentation, and we're going to learn more about this march to the sea. That Kaipo will tell you more about why these birds are marching to the sea. There's somebody else that I should thank first and foremost, and does anybody know who this man is? He actually still goes to work today. He's actually 97 years old. He goes to work when it doesn't snow at the Patuxent in DC. He still shows up, still makes sure his records are in order. Do you think you know who he is, Deborah Ward? The guy who banded wisdom. Very cool. Yeah, Chandler Robbins banded wisdom in what year? In 1956. This was the man who banded wisdom. Otherwise, we would never know how old wisdom is. If it wasn't him spending many, many, many weeks in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, particularly Midway, because it was easy to get to at the time, to at least be able to band many birds, and some of them were of course, being killed at that time because of all the tremendous amount of military activity. So there were a lot of planes coming in and out of Midway in the mid-50s. So to be able to know that a bird existed there in the mid-50s that still continues on today is because of this man by the name of Chandler Robbins. He went back in the year 2006. He went back and he was 83 years old at the time. And guess what Chandler Robbins was doing? He was out there with everybody else in the field banding birds. And he just so happened to document this bird. He did not understand or even know that it was the bird he banded in 1956 until he went back home. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, he called Midway and said, this is interesting. One of these band numbers on my records, it leads back to a bird I banded in 1956. And John Clevitter, who was the biologist at the time, said, really? Can you tell us where that bird is? And he said, oh yeah, that bird nests behind Bravo Barracks, right? Yeah, that's where it is. You can go find him in Bravo Barracks, about 20 feet out and this far from the barracks. And John went, really? You know where this bird is? So John went out there and John found wisdom and put another band on wisdom that became very visible, and a number that we use today for wisdom's band is Z333. So if it wasn't for Chandler at the age of 83, who had great recall and knew exactly where wisdom was sitting, would we even know where to look for wisdom? So it was that kind of banding records and that kind of information that leads us to today. I also work not only for Papa Hanauma Kuakea as a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service employee, but I also work for the Marine National Monuments of the Pacific. It's a fairly new designation of its size, and you can see up there that look what is the largest marine national monument in the Pacific. Right now it's called Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monument. So we used to Papahanaumokuakea used to be right up there as far as the size of marine national monuments, but Papahanaumokuakea actually inspired other action. Obama, when he expanded the Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monument, so there's a lot more area of the ocean out there that is protected for seabirds, for coral reefs, for everything that is the life of the ocean around these islands and atolls and the large expanse of sea that feeds creatures like wisdom. Can somebody tell me, when you look at this picture, can you tell me how it makes you feel? Does anybody want to let me know how it makes you feel when you look at this picture? Very sweet. How's it make you feel? Andy loves to talk about doing
My mother, curious.
Curious? You say your mother?
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting to me, and this is the only way that I have known how to explain it, because I'm not sure exactly what was happening in this country. But I mean, I do have an idea of what was happening in this country, and I remember what was happening with me emotionally. And I started looking back on what happened in this country at the end of November. Was a feeling that I had never felt before. And where I'm taking this is to, why did people latch on to a bird? And there was a pretty horrific mass shooting on October 1st at a community college in Oregon. And there was a very horrific terrorist attacks. That was like November 13. And then in the first day of December, what happened? Do you remember? These are back-to-back mass shootings that this country had never experienced before, back-to-back of that magnitude before. San Bernardino, right, on December 1st. And here's some words I wanted to share that Obama said on December 1st. He said, he says, as details surrounding the San Bernardino, California mass shooting, President Obama told CBS News that U.S. has a pattern now of mass shootings in this country that has no parallel anywhere else. So what people were feeling at that time, and I heard it on the news many times because I felt it myself, is we felt kind of numb. We didn't know what to do. And I think Obama said something else that was very compelling, is that he also said, to tell the families I'm sorry, he says, is just not good enough anymore. So I think this country felt numb and confused, and it was a very painful time for us. What happened around that time was into November. I'm sitting, I'll tell you a quick story, and then I am definitely going to move through the slides a lot faster. I was sitting in Honolulu, and I got an email. It was like November 23rd, and it was either the biologist or the refuge manager. He said, oh, by the way, Wisdom came back. And he included it in a quick sentence with a couple other paragraphs, because there was always an emergency at the time that was always a bigger deal than Wisdom coming back, because we don't have any money and there's no staff. So I called him up and I said, really, Wisdom came back? That's awesome. So waited a couple more days to get more information about, okay, where is she, blah, 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 blah. So I sent out a news release, and I waited just a couple more days once I got all the information. So I sent it out the day before Thanksgiving. So this is in the midst of this country feeling this way. And so that news release went out on Thanksgiving Day. By Friday, I went back to work, and it went so-called viral. Papers had picked it up. CNN, NBC, CBS, Al Jazeera, BBC. It went on for days, where the phone was just ringing off the hook. And Dan Clark was overwhelmed in Honolulu. He couldn't return the calls. I'm still looking, trying to figure out who called him that we talked to. And we had notices from Australia and from New Zealand. And so it just kept going like this. And then I realized, what is it? What makes it different this time? And all I know is that there was something that resonated that was hopeful, something that was a feel good, something that was a wow, that had nothing to do with a mass shooting or trying to even comprehend behind the motions of that. But what is really cool is the world for 3 or 4 days was really looking at this archipelago going, where? Where's Midway? And wow, this bird who is more than 60, actually 65 years old. That's a great, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you caught me. I'm glad you caught me. Somebody did the math and she says, no, it's not, it's 60 years old. If you do the math, if she was banded on December the 10th, you're exactly right. But, exactly. How long do you think it takes for a little chick to be able to reproduce? So in other words, Wisdom was sitting on a nest. You see this picture right up here? Wisdom had to be sitting on the nest. These birds are very approachable and very focused on sitting on the nest. Now that should play. There we go. What happened is these are playing in slow-mo, so you're getting an up-close personal view of bird throw up here in a minute in slow motion. I do not know why it's not going faster, but but the idea is that these birds are very focused on being on the nest constantly, especially with incubating an egg. They're never off the nest while they're incubating an egg. And if they're feeding a chick, it takes 2 parents to feed the chick. So was it easy for a Chandler Robbins to walk up to a bird and band it while it's sitting on the nest? Literally, we band tens of albatrosses every year while the bird is still sitting on the nest. So for that brief disturbance for a couple of minutes, we've got very good at banding these albatross. They're still, yes, are they distraught? Yes, but they're still focused on sitting on the nest. So it was very, it was a very easy thing for Chandler Robbins to be able to do, was to band Wisdom. But Wisdom, we knew, had to be at least 5 years old. So add 5, because Chandler didn't band Wisdom as a chick, add 5. She could have been 10 years old. She could have been 15. She could have been 20. And that's part of the magic. That's part of the wonder. That's part of the wow. Wow. You mean she might not be 65. She could be 75. And I talked to the leading researcher in Seabirds that we often turn to, Dr. Scott Schaefer, and he said, we don't know how long albatross lives. When you open the Golden Guide and open up books, and yeah, we know as long as what we know, which is not many birds that we've banded in comparison to the bigger population. So it truly is finding out more about Wisdom. In 1950s, this is what Midway looked like. Do you see a bird sitting there? Now maybe it might not be albatross season, but Midway looks very different today. But this is what Wisdom was faced with in the early 1950s. This is part of the wonder, is what, how in the world could a bird make it through all that human activity that was going through the buildup of the Cold War era? Most of Midway was, Sand Island was paved, and there was far more many people than there were birds in the 1950s on Midway. Today, Midway, there's a lot more birds than there are people on Midway. So the birds have displaced the people. But again, in 1950, guess what? Or even in the 1940s, it could be that our Wisdom probably was not dancing the jitterbug, but dancing her own dance. Uh-oh. Okay.
We're just gonna play this video real quick. Let's see. Sorry about that.
So it's a mating dance now.
Uh-huh.
Oh, sorry, 1 second.
How many of you guys have seen this dance? Cool. Where can you go on Oahu to see the dance? Kaena Point. Everybody in this room can go to Kaena Point. In November, December, there are juveniles there. When I say juveniles, these are the teenagers who have not found their mate for life yet. They are practicing their own form of the jitterbug, which is very elaborate. Scientists have figured out 25 different movements go to this dance. And out of literally hundreds and thousands of, you can play that one more time, out of literally hundreds of thousands of seabirds, they practice dancing. And it can go on for years like this until they find their mate for life. And what we've also discovered is it was believed that they always came back in November to dance, but that's not true. Once they find their mate, what takes them back to their mate is their nest location. So Wisdom in the 1950s or maybe in the 40s, who knows, was doing a dance and she found her mate. And so what did she do next? Okay, can you get me
Good.
that? Yep. She found her mate for life. I'll get to that point in a minute when we talk about bird sex. But my point I wanted to make here was that the admiration for Wisdom is also based on how the heck did she survive all those years with all the threats at sea. And we're going to get the threats over with because they're not very pretty and sometimes they're hard to digest. Because those threats at sea have to do with our choices and our actions and what we've done over the years. But this is Wisdom's world, a huge part of the ocean where she forages for food. And how does she figure out how to come back to Midway every year? Every year for at least 65 years, she used the sun, she used the moon, she used the alignment of the stars. She's one of the most natural navigators there is on the planet to try to figure out where Midway is come November. Because what she's going to do is she's found her mate for life. And they come back to the same general location, and that's where they meet up. And there's no way that I have any idea how they can tell each other from everybody else, all the other birds that look just the same. But every year they do, and every year she lays an egg, and that egg is formed with tremendous amount of energy. It only takes a couple of days for that egg to form, and then in just a couple of days after that, she's headed out to sea because she is exhausted trying to find her food. So what is unique about these seabirds is they are solely dependent upon the help of the ocean, and the only way that she can feed enough food to her little chick is if there's enough larger predator fish in the ocean that force the smaller fish, the prey fish, to the top of the ocean that also forces squid to the top of the ocean. So where is Wisdom going? Where is her mate going? Because it's going to take two of them to provide enough nutrients for that chick to be able to survive. But it's absolutely correlated with the health of the ocean. So thank goodness there's places like Papa Hanauma, Puakea, and other places in the ocean where fishing is not allowed. Longline fishery has been a huge problem in the past for albatrosses. There's been a lot of effort go into changing their baiting protocols. So the bait sinks really fast before it hooks the albatross. But thousands of albatross died at the hands of longline fisheries before a lot of change took place, and they've changed their fishing habits. Is that an albatross?
No.
What is that? That's a white tern. All seabirds are dependent upon the health of the ocean, and you guys learned that from David Heirenbacher's talk last night. I had to throw this in there because of the upcoming Manuoku Festival at Iolani Palace. I hope you guys make it there. It'll be May 14th. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's an amazing amount of white terns. When I first moved here 22 years ago, you did not see white terns nesting like they're doing today on Oahu. So this is really a fun thing for all of you guys to be able to enjoy your native white terns. Wisdom did not face as many plastics in the sea in the 50s and 60s as what Wisdom faces now. It confuses her when she sees plastic floating in the sea. And therefore she gets mixed up. Now I don't know whether Wisdom does, because she's a pretty smart bird, and we'll talk about bird wisdom and bird smarts here in a minute. But many birds get plastics mixed up with food that are floating, and they actually come back and feed those plastics to their young juveniles. She didn't face so much of that in the 50s and 60s, but Wisdom miraculously survived. I'm not going to say it was miraculous, because a lot of work went into building up the dune line of Midway Atoll National Wildlife Refuge. But what month did this happen in 2011? The Japanese tsunami also greatly impacted and covered up many of the islands in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, and completely inundated Eastern Island. You see over there to the right, except for about a third of the island was untouched. So unfortunately in March, when you have a lot of juveniles and you have mom and dad trying to feed those juveniles, you have a lot of albatrosses on the ground, a lot of bone and petrels, a lot of shearwaters on the ground. We lost thousands of birds that day when the Japanese tsunami hit our shoreline. The impacts from that tsunami. Much of Sand, okay, I've got a little red pointer here. Much of Sand Island was also impacted, but do you see that shoreline? Wait a minute, let me get this right. Right there is where Wisdom's nest is. And one of the reasons that she survived that tsunami that took out tens and thousands of birds, it wasn't a pretty place to be for those that were there when that happened, is because of the tremendous amount of effort for us to get rid of the invasives and to bring back now Paka, a natural dune builder, a natural dune stabilizer. And now we have like 20 feet of dune height, actually within, I'd say within 100 yards of where Wisdom is nesting. It definitely made a difference as far as what parts of the island took impact and what didn't. This is what that patch of Naupaka looks like. And Barbara and I remember when we went to Midway 20 years ago that was flat as a pancake, wasn't it? So a lot of recovery has happened, which is all part of the joy, and all part of the magic, and all part of the wonder, knowing that people might have made a difference in trying to increase her chances of survival. So Wisdom came back. Now we're going to forward to November. End of November, she finds her mate, and you're probably asking, wait a minute, mate for life, does that mean the mate's just as old as she is, right? It's like, well, she's probably outlived a couple of mates. I'm working on that myself. So we'll see where that goes. So, this is amazing that one of our biologists actually got her in action with her mate. So this is what seabird sex looks like. And for those of y'all that you are really curious, yes, wisdom's on the bottom here. So this is probably her third or fourth mate. So some albatross do not go on and find another mate, and some albatross do. Wisdom obviously did. And it is also interesting to me that, okay, so I'm going to hope this plays. It's not going to play, that's okay.
Just go back here. This is this one, right?
Yeah, oh, sorry. This was captured on December 1st. So again, remember what's happening in this country. This was a feel-good story that just kept on giving. It was a feel-good story, and that viral impact was just that wisdom showed up. It wasn't that the mate was even there. They didn't even know that yet. So it was like this viral wave of attention took off at the fact that wisdom was even there. And then I was able to announce on the backside of this that wisdom's mate did show up. They found each other, and she is sitting on the nest right. He's on the right, sitting on the nest, and she's on the left. And basically what she's decided is, I'm done, and I'm going to head out to sea. See you later. Good luck with that. I'm tired. Took all my energy to make an egg, and I'm glad that we found each other. And there sits Goo, and we call him Goo. Yes, there's a better name coming up real soon, I promise you, in this show. But at that time, the biologists on Midway were calling him Goo because on his band number it said G-O-O-O. I wasn't real crazy about it, so we were able to change that. But there sat Goo, and Goo sat there, and he sat there, and he sat there. And it was like, when is wisdom coming back? So this is December 1st. Wisdom takes off, and guess who shows up on Christmas Day? Wisdom shows up on Christmas Day. This whole time we're thinking, this is it. Wisdom's not coming back. She's too tired. She just can't keep doing this. When is her body going to give up? But no, she shows back up on Christmas Day. So what does Goo do? Goo says, great, I'm out of here. And there are no pictures that I have between December 25th to mid-January until I was able to go up there, fly up there in mid-January. And Goo was already back. So I don't know how long. Wisdom was probably on the nest a couple of weeks. Goo was already back, and here is Goo. No, I'm sorry, this is not Goo, but it's right next to Goo. But it's exactly what Goo does, and a lot of them do, and really working on building their nest in anticipation for the egg to hatch. Thank you. Working and working and working at that.
Question.
Yeah.
Do you have a webcam that you don't look at any of this stuff?
We're working on that. It's been a dream for a long time. It's going to take a lot of money and spearheading the right satellite to make that happen. That's a great thing that we, because we're Midway, its position in the Pacific has become hugely costly, but we hope one day we will be able to. So there's Set Go, and he sat there, and he sat there, and he sat there, and I started to panic a little bit. I'm like, I flew up here for Wisdom to come back and for a chick to hatch, and is Wisdom gonna come back And then I lost internet connection for 5 days. I was like, oh no, and I was starting to panic. And what did that tell me? Guess what? Nature still has the call, has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with us. Wisdom gets to make the call, Goo gets to make the call as to what happens next. And it was hard for me to communicate with the world and let the Monument communication team know what was happening. But what it did is it forced me to get out of the office. And what I learned that week with internet down was more knowledge about what goes on behind the scenery of albatross and many of those other birds, and the science and the things that we find out from these birds is just phenomenal. So can we play that? Advance forward.
So these tags we're going to put out now are just light level hybrid tags that stay on for a couple of years. They're nice and small. They go on the auxiliary bands. There's a small little light, white, you see that white spot there? That's a light sensor that picks up the light, the ambient light. And from that, we can get the latitude and longitude based on the time of sunrise and sunset. It's called geolocation. And this tag itself probably weighs about 6 grams. So it's quite small, and the bird probably never even hardly feels that it's wearing it. And we'll put it out now, and we'll hopefully collect it next year at this time.
Okay, so now are you replacing it with the same number of tags he's got on now?
No, we're going to change the number for him.
Oh, okay.
That will all get recorded.
Okay. So that's all the process of the meticulous recording of band numbers.
Right,
What do
you have to
get
record
replaced by
everything.
another?
Exactly. Everything has to be recorded and then entered into the bird banding labs, master banding records. Yeah.
For some reason, this is in slow motion. This is not in full speed. For some reason, it's not doing the full speed, but we may have to forward on. But I really would like for you guys to see this really quick, but they are going to capture a bird and put the geolocator on the leg of the bird. And it happens much faster than this when it's in real speed.
Nice.
Oh, there you go.
Like,
Cool.
there we go.
Yeah, yep, there you go, perfect. It's got a handkerchief around her face.
This is one that we can probably use combined with the body mass to determine the sex of the bird. It's 115.
It helps to have a third recorder, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Let's speed this up. Uh-oh.
Oh, you want to go back? Where do you want to go?
Yeah, let's just go there. Okay, yeah, let's just, we need to close it off. Talking too much. Oh, there we go. There's the geolocator attached onto a regular bird band. It's going to go on to her leg. And what I want you to observe is what happens. Now, you would think
See it slides up and down.
that if it wasn't an albatross or another bird, what would happen if you handled a bird like this? It would freak out and it would abandon its nest, and that's not what happens.
So hopefully we'll come back next year
Oh, awesome.
and find this bird again because it's in the reproductive success plan. And recover. the
Okay.
bird and take a
That's
tag
great.
and small blades.
But what happens is he actually flips his hat off to protect the chick. that's there so it doesn't overheat. And that bird just jumps right back on the chick. It's like, get me out of here. I don't want to be right back on my chick. While I was there, I said, Scott, I said, can you pull that data off like in the next couple of months? He said, oh, I can give it to you in a couple of days. I went, really? You can give it to me in a couple of days? Oh, yeah, no problem. I'll just give it to you in a couple of days. So he pulled off the data. Now this is Ann Bale's data line. It has nothing to do with Scott. But what I did yesterday is I extrapolated generally where the boundary was for Papa. Now it's not that squiggly. But the whole point is that if you've read the newspaper, there is definitely people here in Hawaii are trying really hard to expand the protection zone out to 200 miles. Right now, it's only at 50 miles, but they're looking at trying to expand it out to 200 miles. So was this beneficial to send it to DC last week and go, hey, if you expand it out further, we can protect the fishing grounds of some of these seabirds that depend so much on a healthy ecosystem to be able to feed themselves. But that is the flight path of, what, about 6 or 7 birds right there. He can tell where it stops to feed. And where it stops to feed at the end of that path was, okay, I've got enough squid to be able to grab that squid. And this is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles from that chick, and be able to get that squid back to that chick. And that's why it takes 2 parents going consistently. Something else happened while I was there that was a very dramatic discovery that had never been discovered before, is we had a very serious mice problem. And this was like on day 3 that I had no internet. So it was all hands on deck, because guess what is the only island in the northwestern Hawaiian island that has mice? The only island that has mice. It's Sand Island. Here we have the world's largest albatross colony, and we've never had this behavior that was so invasive and so predatory that we have never observed it before. Did we lose some birds? Yes. Are we doing everything to stop it? Yes. Have we stopped it? Yes. It was 3 small areas of Sand Island, but when that happened and the small staff up there, it was like the world stopped. It was all hands on deck, find every mousetrap you can find, and get the folks in DC, get island conservation on the line. We need input as to what's going on. Because of the extremely dry winter, they did exhibit a behavior up there that we had never witnessed before. It wasn't that the injury eventually killed them. What was killing them was instant infection when it got to a point. And when it got to that point, it was too late, and the bird died pretty quickly. Some of them we were able to save, but it's not like we were losing thousands of them. But it was really scary there for a while. And so now we've done enough stop measure that we haven't had any of them. We devised a way to use peanut butter that went into the mice traps. And we called for reinforcements and said, get a plane up here, some people. We need all hands on deck. So it was one of those things that in a way, it was really cool to see conservation in action, to see science in action, and to see people really do their part. There's also a constant effort to pull up invasives. We train the birds to pull up invasives. It works really well. That's why I know these are very smart birds. He's actually building his nest, and we hope that the grounds of Sand Island become more tolerable for these birds versus invasives that tend to choke their nesting habitats out. This is native beach grass that we work to bring back. So it's just in what happens up there and what we were able to do because of wisdom. Again, it had nothing to do with one person. It had to do with the bird that people fell in love with. It got me up there, and also engaged the volunteers in doing live stream into the classroom. And I'm not going to be able to turn that on, so we're going to go through because I'm already running late. But that's a video you can go online at Papaneaumokuakea Facebook page, and you can pull this up. This egg hatching video got like 110,000 reaches pretty quick. So it was still a very wonderful thing to have happen. The egg hatched before Kaipo got there. Kaipo got there the next day, the day before Kaipo got there. I'm going, where's my reinforcements? I'm going nuts. And then I call because I'm walking back from the dining hall, and I just go over there, and Goo is standing up. See, there still is no Wisdom. Goo is exhausted. Wisdom still hadn't shown up, and he stands up, and I go, oh my God, the egg hatches. So I run to the office and call somebody, and it's like, well, what are you going to do? Well, get your iPhone out there, which is why I got my iPhone out there and got the egg hatching. Again, I'm going to have to buzz through this pretty quick. So within just a couple of days, these are looking really totally cute chick, and there's GOOO. So what happened as soon as that chick hatched, I called the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and I said, you guys remember that you were going to name a chick? And I said, it's here, because last year, guess what? Wisdom's chick didn't make it. It was the first time that we observed that in a long time where the chick didn't make it. Actually, the egg didn't make it to hatching. It wasn't the chick. The egg didn't make it to hatching. So here we were, and I said, you remember that? And they said, oh, yeah. We will call her Kukini, which means messenger. And we will call, actually, and they said, but we're not that interested in naming Goo. So what do you think you ought to do with that? And so what we did is I'll let you read that because it's a beautiful message as to what Kukini means. Many layers of meaning, as many Hawaiian words are. So Goo is now called Akiakamai. We put a contest out on Twitter. NPR picked it up, and guess what NPR did? I didn't know this because you're just put your face to the mud and just do whatever you can to share this place with the world. They apparently put my email out on NPR across the country, and so they submitted their name request via my email. I said, Kaipa, you got your work cut out for you. We're going to go through a bunch of emails and try to figure out what we're going to name Goo. But the winning entry was Akiakamai. This is a chicken skin story, because I talked to this guy he's not from Hawaii. He's never been to Hawaii, and he recommended Akiakamai. And I said, what is your connection here? And he says, I care about the ocean, and I'm an artist. And he said, I'm an artist that entered a contest, got an international art award contest in the policy category, and gifted his artwork to John B. Podesta, who was the counselor to President Obama when it was being discussed as to whether we should expand another marine national monument out in the Pacific. So it's those kind of conduits. Here it is, United Kingdom, that I'm having this conversation with. So that's the joy and beauty of a bird. And there is Kaipo at work. He got to know Wisdom very well. And I have to put in a huge shout out to the Friends of Midway Atoll National Wildlife Refuge. They spent more money than the government to make this happen. And so thanks to Nonprofit Association, if you want to support what they do, they supported education wholeheartedly for that venture. Where's Wisdom? We're panicking. Wisdom's not here. Okay, tell the story, Kaipo.
You tell it.
Where was I? It was Super Bowl Sunday.
I was editing in the room, Charlie. And then comes storming in my room. It's like, Wisdom's back. And I'm like, oh my God, we've been waiting like 7 days at least, 6 days. And then, so I grab my camera and we're running, literally running down the hall. And then I get there and both of them, Wisdom's already on the nest and Goo's next to her. So, right when I set up the camera, I get like 1 or 2 shots and then Goo starts, he's leaving already. And I'm just like, oh no. So I follow him and he walks all the way, like Ann said, he walks all the way to the beach. 100 yards. And then he followed him all the way out until he took off his seat.
I couldn't find,
Chase him,
yeah.
through like the field of course he doesn't go along the road that's paved. He goes like through the field and the dodge while he's controls like with my big camera. I have to like run and then like run ahead of him, set it down, so he can get up and go another 10 yards.
So he was able to document that whole Akiakamai starving, and as soon as Wisdom showed up, it took him seconds to get off that nest and hightail it out of there. He was starving, he looked exhausted, didn't he?
You've been sitting there for how long?
He'd been sitting there a month waiting for Wisdom to return. So Wisdom, Kaipo, that's the guy right there that captured these amazing footage and these amazing steals of Wisdom today. She returned. And what does she do? She gets to know her chick, and she talks and she talks and she talks to it. And she sits on it, and she begins to feed the chick, because I was concerned myself. I could tell that chick was underweight compared to the other chicks around her. So it was a welcome sight for a lot of us and for the health and well-being of the chick when Wisdom showed up and was able to feed her plenty. And so Wisdom stayed with her for another, 3 weeks? 3 weeks. And then they started switching off a lot. Like every couple of days they started. So they were, actually, she was there for a good week. And then they started switching off very regularly. And that is exactly what nature had intended, because this chick is growing, so it needs a lot of fresh food very often. So every couple of days, here comes goo, here comes Wisdom, here comes goo, here comes Wisdom. So still a lot of energy is expended. And a lot of energy is also expended in here on Oahu, and this is a great effort going on at James Campbell National Wildlife Refuge. Today, up on James Campbell are 20 very healthy juvenile chicks that are standing about this tall, and they came from eggs, and you guys can come up afterwards and pass this around. This is the size of an albatross egg. They came from eggs that came from barking sand. And that's okay if you drop it. We've got plenty. But they came from barking sands on Kauai. So they were reared here on Oahu, so we could bring back albatross to the place that they existed for thousands and thousands of years before we brought our rats and cats and dogs. Yes? You know what? Because it would smell really bad if there was still the yolk in that egg. That egg didn't make it. It didn't hatch out. So it's like one of those Easter egg things where you put a hole in it and then you drain the yolk out. So we can bring it and show you guys how the size of an albatross is.
Oh.
It would stink pretty bad if the yolk was still in there. So that now these juvenile chicks are sitting in little huts, and guess what is visiting them? Adult albatrosses. So here is the process of, we know eventually we're going to lose Sand Island and Eastern Island with the rising sea level, climate change. So what are we doing? We're trying to bring albatrosses back to where they once were, where they once were to begin with. They were native all throughout Hawaii, and they nested everywhere here. So that's a big success story, and Kukini's doing fine. So I'll go up in a couple of weeks and report back, and stay tuned and plug into Papa Hanauma Kuakea Facebook page so I can send more pictures back. There's Kayana Point, and this was Wisdom's chick a couple of years ago. So we were able to band Wisdom's chick just before it fledged in 2014. Can we end with that video, or is it too late?
We'll have the video running, I guess, when we take after your Q&A.
Okay,
How
good.
about that?
Okay. Sorry, you guys. Barbara, you were supposed to.
So are you ready for your, any questions? Okay.
There was a lot of traveling, and the cool thing is guess what's going up there next month? is the same fence from the New Zealand company that's up at Canna Point, that's going out at James Campbell. And they're literally constructing it. They're months behind in getting it up, but as soon as that fence goes up, there's not gonna be the threat of a loose cat or a mongoose. But right now, we've got everything, you know, we're busy with traps and fencing until the,
Does it also keep out rats and mice?
yes. Have you ever been up to Canada? That's the amazing thing about this new fence. New Zealand's been using it for years and years and years, and this fence keeps out the rats and mice.
What is it?
It's, I wish I had a picture of it. It's obviously more fine meshed than the normal fence that you think of. It's very tall, it angles out to keep, you know, things can't go up and around. And it's very deep, right?
Yeah,
They
it's
did
very, some of it goes down underground, so a mouse can't dig under.
Or a pig can't dig under. So it's very expensive, and it takes a lot of effort to be able to put the fence in, but it's worth it.
Did they also find out all the albatross on
I think they're still working on that. It hasn't been made official. Deborah is the one that could tell you that. She's public affairs with the state, and they have to leave. So it hasn't, it's not public. Yeah, that was sad, very sad. Yes.
Basic albatross question. When Wisdom goes away, where does she go? That map that has the GPS, is she airborne the whole time?
Albatrosses spend most of their life at sea. They only come in to mate because they can't lay an egg on the water, find their mate and rear an egg. Some years they take off. They may be in the process of molting. They may need more rest before they try to rear another chick again. But they spend literally the whole time at sea. Now they'll sit on the water and they'll rest on the water, but they expend a lot less energy flying than they do walking. So if we could fly like albatrosses, we would save millions of dollars in flight miles and gasoline and a lot of things. Because if we could coast like we do to the mainland like these birds do, wow. They're a work of nature's art as far as.
They're the U-2s.
They're the what?
U-2s. Spy aircraft are U-2. Big, long, skinny wings, and they can fly forever.
You're with, right?
Big.
Bigger.
A U-2 is bigger.
No, the albatross.
Oh,
Albatross.
Oh, yeah.
Albatross wing whip.
Yeah.
How does she look different from earlier pictures that we have? How has she aged? She almost
Not
gracefully.
Right, not gray hair.
And she's very graceful.
Yeah.
She's just as beautiful as she was in the earlier photos I've seen. Started taking a lot of pictures of her when we realized how old she was and she didn't. Now, there are certain things that start to break down, such as her ability to provide enough calcium for protection of the yolk, and that's probably what happened last year. I don't know for sure. That was a weird thing. It was like the egg just showed up missing. So it's like, okay, did it get weeds and bugs got it and mice did it. But stay tuned. Let's just keep following her every year because she has reared a chick successfully 5 or 6 times just within the past 8 years.
Yeah, I just want to know, where's the fence going up at Campbell? Is it going up by the dunes or is it?
By the dunes. It's going up parallel to the ocean by the dunes, and it's, I can show you on that.
We're going to conclude our formal part of the seminar today, and we'll just you can hang out. We're going to play this video for you. You can also find it. It's on YouTube. It's called Voyage of Wisdom if you want to watch it at home. But we'll have it playing if you guys have any other questions or